Alrighty, here we go. Match 1 of the semifinals. Just getting down to it. Which sport is better? We have our Winter Olympic Games sports facing off against each other. We have bobsled or curling. Which is the better sport? Also, I'm going to just take a moment to say congratulations on both of these sports for making it this far. It is a testament to the sport. And how are they similar? How are they different? Both are team sports. Both are small team sports. Both are Winter Olympic sports, and both sports are conducted on ice. They're kind of actually very similar in those ways. Ways they are different. The equipment they use is different. So bobsled uses a sled or a sleigh, and curling uses, I'm still calling it the giant hockey puck, even though it's not a giant hockey puck and brooms. That's still so cool. So those are, yeah, I have not participated in either of these sports so far in my life. I thoroughly enjoy watching both of them. These are the two sports I would say for the Winter Olympic Games that I enjoy watching the most, are bobsled and curling. That's part of why I chose them for this competition, to be fair and balanced, was I was like, my favorite sports are included from the Summer Olympic Games, should be the same from the Winter Olympic Games. And so, that's a bit about bobsled or curling. The overarching theme for evaluating which sport is better for this round is the physical, mental, and social health and wellness of athletes in this sport. So let's start with physical. Both of these, I've touched on this a bit for both of these sports before, in the prelims and playoffs in different ways. Physically, both of these sports require extreme physical stamina and extreme core strength for their athletes, because they have to, in bobsled, they have to be able to lean with the sled or sleigh so it doesn't tip over, and in curling they have to be able to keep their balance as they're walking on ice, so to speak, or moving on ice. And so they both require extreme core strength. The sweeper position in curling requires extreme arm strength. I could say they all require extreme arm strength, and bobsled requires sprinting strength as well, as like positioning, but you got that a bit in curling too, of an apparatus. So they're actually pretty, and in that very basic kind of comparison, they're pretty comparable. So let's go to mental. Bobsled is a high risk sport, and curling, I think by virtue of having to move on ice, it's high risk, and I would say that might not be immediately obvious, but I fell and I hit my head on tile just standing still when I was brushing my teeth. So like having to move on ice on foot is actually quite high risk, because if you fall wrong or you fall backwards, you could hit your head, and I got severe amnesia from my head injury. So like you could like, I cracked it tiny, but like if you cracked it big, you could actually die from something like that. So you could technically die from both of these sports. It's like kind of sad to think about. I think that's like kind of true for all Winter Olympic sports. It's just how immediately obvious that is or not. Yeah. Okay, so they're both high risk in very different ways. Like as if the bobsled tips over, you could get very injured. Though I think it's kind of designed to keep the athletes in the sled safe. So how does that relate to mental health? Well, you have to be able to handle participating in a high-risk sport. And so to be at a high level, or even participating in it, requires kind of a certain threshold of mental health, or one might die. And one might die even without, or like being in good mental health. but that's kind of like I would almost say like a prerequisite to being in the sport. So there's like a good threshold. Other ways, I might actually say curling might edge out bobsled in that it requires mental, like being able to keep track of the past history of like if you're sweeping, even if the ice is cleaned off between, like you're moving ice even if on like a small scale. So like got to remember kind of where one has swept, like at least from my perspective as a spectator. And so there's a bit of knowing what one has already done and using that to figure out the trajectory of this giant hockey puck on the ice while sweeping, and like you have to continually adjust as this puck is in movement until you can't adjust anymore. And there's kind of foresight required as to how do we get it to this target. And in bobsled, there's also mental precision, especially in like coordinating body movements and you're leaning, but you also get that in curling. But at the beginning, when aligning the sleigh or the sled, when getting one's momentum and entering the track. And so I would actually say on a mental level, curling is gonna edge out bobsled for me, from my perspective, spectator for both of these. So then it comes down to social health and wellness of the athletes and the sport. Socially, so their small team, this might actually be a tie, at least on this component, because they're both small teams, so you have to be able to get along with teammates. I'm trying to think of like the practice conditions. I imagine there are other people using the track when like doing bobsled, and I imagine that there would be other, like more than just one's team using the ice arena or whatever is used for curling practice. So in that sense, it requires social interaction, social interactions within the team itself and with other community members. And so in that sense, it doesn't mean everybody will have good social health, but it does have the foundational framework, both of these sports do, for maintaining good social health. So I would call that one a tie. I'd call physical health and wellness the tie, and curling edges out bobsled ever so slightly on the mental health and wellness category. So first round result for these semifinals, we have curling. Which is the better sport? Which sport is better? Curling takes it over bobsled. What?